You're listening to the Good Food CFO podcast, where we challenge the status quo of the food industry, celebrate good food founders who are building businesses on their own terms, introduce industry disruptors, and are redefining equitability. If you're ready to build your financial confidence and join the good food revolution to change the way the food industry does business, you are in the right place. I'm the Good Food CFO and your host, Sarah Delavan. Today on the podcast, I am joined once again by Brady DeLong. Brady is an 8-year sales and operations veteran of the CPG industry. Spending the first chapter of his career on the food and beverage side, he's now working in the health, beauty, and wellness arena. Brady has grown brands through direct-to-consumer, traditional distribution, food service, retail, and B2B E-Commerce, a relatively new channel that he utilized to exponentially grow sales after experiencing constraints in traditional distribution channels. Brady has since become an expert in the channel and is sharing how exactly B2B e-commerce sites work, what every brand needs before going live on a new B2B e-commerce platform, his best practices, and a unique pricing strategy. We packed a lot of great information in this episode, so let's get to it. Brady, welcome back to the podcast.
Happy to be here, Sarah. Great to see you.
You too. So last time you were here, you were sharing a building a business on your own terms story. And part of that story was utilizing alternative channels for getting CPG product to consumers. And you did that due to constraints that you were experiencing in traditional distribution channels. Can you share a little bit here about what exactly was happening that made you want to start to make a transition out of traditional channels to B2B e-commerce channels, for example?
Yeah, I mean, people obviously should go back and listen to that episode. We grew the company I used to be at Hen of the Woods. We had grown nationally with traditional distribution, and we had pretty much coast to coast coverage. And economically, as many small brands know, it's very challenging, especially salty snacks, super competitive category. So we just struggled with it, and we eventually had to kind of close those doors down. And it didn't really hurt our pride necessarily to close the distribution, but it was just kind of a bummer to lose those accounts and just to lose the ability of a brand to be like, well, like we do have a national desire for our products. Like there are people all across the country, from retailers and independent stores and chain groups, and then all the customers. And so like we were bummed that we lost that aspect. And as someone who's in sales and marketing, like it's like we worked really hard to get the product in front of them. We spent all of our money getting them to buy it off the shelf, and then for it just to not work out economically, a sunk cost is a sunk cost, and you have to walk away. But it's like, I know it works. I know these people in these regions and these states want to carry our product, so let's find a new way. And that was kind of like what led us to all these e-commerce B2B platforms.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about what platform specifically we're talking about here? Because this term might be new to some people listening, because there's e-commerce, right? And there's B2B. Now we're sort of merging the two in a relatively new channel called B2B e-commerce.
Yeah. So, I mean, first crack at it was we tried to do it ourselves. So I built like an extra web page on our website that just kind of outlined what it looked like to do business directly with Hen of the Woods. The downside there was we either had to get the customer to pay for shipping, or we had to pay for shipping, or split shipping. And it was just incredibly expensive to ship kettle chips, which was the product I was selling at the time. And so we really struggled for it to take off, but we continued to kind of push at it, and we got great regional kind of B2B e-commerce saturation, not saturation, but we went from having, I don't know, 10 or 15 accounts that we would ship product to having like 40 accounts that we'd ship product to. And that was like, kind of the Southeast region of the United States up to, call it, Chicago. once we got outside of that range, shipping was not economical. And then we were actually in the midst of a direct-to-consumer e-commerce push when we discovered Faire, which was the first platform that we started to utilize. So once we discovered that, we discovered some of the other ones. The main ones that are proving to be more than just incremental and substantial is going to be Faire and Mable. RangeMe has some great tools built in, and they kind of cross streams a little bit. Just, there are other tools, so there's a way that you can kind of piggyback those tools and find some success. And then there's others such as Tundra. Specialty Food Association has one. Those never really did a lot for our brand, for the old company I worked at, but Faire and Mable are very much, I think, for food and beverage and natural CPG, the creme de la creme of marketplaces.
When we call them a marketplace, can you describe a little bit about what's happening on those marketplaces and how they work? And I know there's some differences between platforms, but sort of in general.
Yeah, so they are different. The beautiful thing about both Mable and Faire is at the date of recording, and that's all that I can say, is it is not a pay-to-play platform. Right. So it is not like Amazon or other platforms where you're not going to compete unless you're spending money on sponsored posts or sponsored ads, sponsored placements. So the way that these platforms work is similar to an Amazon, but you kind of have a brand page where you're able to upload all your different products. I mean, I've seen brands with hundreds of products, so there's not really a limit to your catalog. Yeah. They're very visual platforms. I mean, I like to think of them more as direct-to-consumer platforms. I treat them that way from a visuals standpoint, keyword standpoint, the language that you're using. Obviously, you're going to want to include additional language that plays to the retail environment, but a lot of those same things that you would put on your Amazon store or your Shopify store, the reasons people should try it play on B2B as well. At the end of the day, it is a human buying your product. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty basic. I mean, they'll a lot of times break categories down between salty snacks or coffee products or ready to drink beverages, and you can sort that way. There's a lot of different foodie collections that they'll put together. The platforms themselves, the marketplaces, they'll put together women founders, they'll put together BIPOC founder collections, they'll put together gluten-free. So there's all kinds of attributes and things you want to make sure you're including that will help kind of segment your product, and you'll show up in some of their features. But they're very organic marketplaces. And the way that your product is served is very much based upon how new you are to the platform and how well you're selling on the platform.
And essentially, wholesale buyers, so independent retailers or whomever might be reselling your product, they come to the platform Faire or Mable, they can find your product and purchase it, and you don't have to go through any additional. But it's almost a direct connection, and the platform is helping to facilitate it.
Yes, it is same way a customer would come to your website and buy something direct to consumer. It's the same way, except it's a retailer. Yeah. And then you get that direct connection, which is definitely one of the things we'll talk about today and what's so valuable about the platform.
Yeah. So it's the Good Food CFO podcast. So we're definitely going to talk about money. And I think, one of the biggest struggles with some of the traditional distribution channels is cost and the shrinking margins, as we like to talk about around here. As more people touch your product, right, to get it to the end consumer, the less money the brand is making on the sale of that product. With B2B e-commerce, so Faire and Mable are taking a fee of some sort. I totally appreciate that they're not a pay-to-play site, which is great. But once you do sell your product to a customer, what are the fees looking like generally, and what do they help to take care of on the platform?
So the fee on Faire is a 15% referral fee. And if you're on Amazon, you sell your product on Amazon, you'll understand terminology referral fee. That's what they call the percentage that they take, commission. And on Mable, it is at the time of recording 12.5%. So it is slightly lower than on Faire. Outside of that, on Faire, shipping is dependent on you as a brand, how you want to set shipping up. So that would be some of the other costs. But from a fee perspective, there are no other fees. Every other deduction, not everyone to call it deduction, but all the other money that you will spend to get the product to the customer is in your control. You can say no, you can reject the order if you don't like the way that it looks. So yeah, there are no other we shouldn't have done that. We ended up losing money. If that's not going to happen.
You know all the information going in,
Yes.
when fees are going to be charged. It's a very transparent
Yes.
method of getting your product to your customers. I think something else you've mentioned about this platform is the connection that you can have with your customer. So we're kind of doing some comparison to Amazon. I think Amazon is known for really keeping you separate from the people who are buying your product. And is that the case on a B2B e-commerce site like Mable or Faire, or do you get to nurture and kind of have more of a relationship with your customer?
You can have an incredible relationship with the customer. Faire specifically, and Mabel's coming along here, they're always onboarding new tools. Faire is the Goliath in the room. On that platform, you have email communications and you have their built-in messaging platform. So as soon as a customer buys your products, they go into both of those systems and you can communicate with them as regularly as you want. And I think that you should take full advantage of those, and especially on Faire. I kind of had a couple of different processes that I had automated. One, you can turn on their automations. So if someone ordered 60 days ago and they haven't ordered, you can set up automations. You can see what kind of value is in a customer's cart once they are a customer. So you can sort by your customer list, see who's got product in your cart, and then you can send them a message or an email, be like, hey, so you had that in your cart. Was wondering why you hadn't pulled the trigger if you have any questions. I also had a rule that the second order that any account placed, I would send them a direct message through the platform. It was not a selling message. It was just a thank you. And I let them know that I had added them to our store locator. I don't add anybody to the store locator on first orders. Try to make sure we get at least two. So that would usually like a great engagement point of when they'd be like, oh, they're bringing me value now, so I'll re-engage with them. And the product line of the company I used to be at, I mean, we were in about 3 or 4 different categories. So that was then when, if they came to us for one category, I could educate them on products in another category. And that's like such a huge value of these platforms is if you onboard with UNFI or KE or even a regional distributor, the likelihood of them carrying your entire catalog is extremely low. You come out with a seasonal flavor and you're a small brand, good luck getting them to bring it in. So this gives you the opportunity to really like share your whole catalog, introduce limited runs. If you are manufacturing yourselves and you have those capabilities, it's a great way to test the water on things like that. And you can communicate that availability so effectively to your customer base, whether it's messaging or the email platform that's built in. Mable, they introduced a messaging platform maybe 3 or 4 months ago, and it's effective. It's not quite as robust as what Faire has built, and they are piloting some emails right now. So I know that's something that they are working on. I think if you have a Mable account, you can actually go in there and you can see that it exists in some capacity. and they've done some like one-off promotional emails and things, so they know that the feature set works. They're just, I guess, fine-tuning it on the back end and
Yeah.
making sure everything works. But it's communicating through the platforms, building those direct relationships can turn an account that is maybe ordering when they remember into an account that's ordering once a month.
Yeah.
And you just don't get that level of intimacy using middleman such as KE or Unify.
Yeah. So you had said, that you started to think about these B2B e-commerce platforms when, or I should say after you set up a page on your own website, like a Shopify extension, you had reached a certain regional distribution level, up to the point where shipping kind of got a bit too expensive to go beyond, that region. What did your growth or reach look like once you were on this platform or these platforms? I guess that's a question for you. Did you use both right off the bat, and then sharing what your growth looked like once you're on the platform for a while?
So launched on Faire in September of 2021. So we had done our direct stuff for about 10 months. And like I said, that grew from like a handful of accounts to a few dozen accounts. And it was going really well. And it worked. And we knew that we just needed to kind of essentially subsidize shipping. So we launched on Faire first. And that was a huge eye opener because at the time, Faire Insider program was a bit more liberal. It was like the heyday of Faire, and they were just covering everyone's shipping. So brands could ship essentially for free. Retailers could get stuff shipped for free if the retailer was a Faire Insider. Faire Insider is a program that retailers have to opt into, costs them money, and it gives them access to free shipping, and it gives them access to like early onboarding and like first chance at limited runs and things like that. But there's like other feature sets that you get as Faire Insider. I always listed our products free shipping. If we are going to have to foot the bill for shipping, I still try to incorporate it into the price of the product. Retailers, especially in grocery, they don't like variable costs. So, if you are charging for shipping and you're not seeing success, I can almost tell you like the reason is you're charging for shipping. Not that it's the price that's the problem, it's that the customer doesn't know what the price is going to be.
Right.
And retailers, they love margins. Everyone who's in this industry knows that. They like to know what they are. So that variable cost is a big no-no. You might get gift shops and stuff like that on board, but more traditional food and beverage retailers, that's going to be a challenge.
And you're saying
So
that you built the cost of shipping into the price of your product. So it was somewhat being covered or fully being covered, but the customer knows exactly what they're paying for the product and then what they're going to sell it on shelf for and what their
yes,
margins will be. Got it.
yeah, consistency is key there. So when we first launched, we got like dozens of orders, and we were like, "Oh, so this is really a thing. This is sweet." And we did like a few $1,000s the first month, and it was no effort of ours. I mean, I just created the listings and put our images and wrote the copy, and that was that. When you first launch, you do get a kind of initial push by both platforms. So when you build out your page, you want to like, I know people always talk about MVP, well, minimum viable product, but on these platforms, like you only get one shot to launch once. You can't do it again. They're never going to put you new at Faire in 9 months if you finally decide to optimize your listings.
Right.
So I firmly believe that you should take your time. You should get some beautiful images. You should have very robust copy. You should fill out every field on there, all of your attributes. They now have for food and beverage specifically like allergens and different things like made in the USA or sourced locally, or like all these different really awesome like qualifiers and things. So fill them out to the absolute best of your ability. Like annoy yourself with how many keywords and how much labor and time it takes you to do it, because you only get one shot. And if you do it right and you pick up 20 customers in the first month, that is such a larger snowball to start building upon than two customers.
Yeah.
Because with Faire, your ranking is based upon your velocity. Your ranking is based upon, your recurring orders, based upon just, it's all algorithm. So the better you're doing, the higher you rank, and you can't do anything to raise that except sell more stuff. Yeah, it's very important to get set up right the first go around. But for our brand, we had that first kind of great month, and then things definitely like tanked, and we were like, oh, okay, maybe that's not really a thing. And then we kind of had some other major projects that were on my plate at the time, so I wasn't really able to pay a ton of attention to Faire kind of through the holidays. It was also during that time frame that we onboarded with Mable. I think it was maybe like October, November. So shortly after the Faire on board. And unlike Faire, Mable does have an active selling team. So they will attempt to place your products if they believe in your products, and they align with some of the retailer partners that they have and they communicate with. So they do kind of have a sales force there. Obviously they can't sell every single brand. I think they have like 1,500 brands or maybe even more at this point on there. But through the holidays, things were a little slow, and we're not a seasonal product. So sales for the old company I was at were usually slower during that time frame anyways. January, obviously huge snacking time of the year. So we were ready to go. I had emails going. We had promotions lined up for January. And we were just like firing on all cylinders. We saw that ramp back up very quickly. Then in February, they have their winter market, which, if you're familiar with KeHE and UNFI and you have participated in any of their, programs where they compound your promotion. So if you're giving 15%, they'll throw on an extra 5. If you're giving 25%, they'll throw on an extra 10. Faire does the same thing twice a year. So the Faire winter market and the Faire summer market. So they started emailing us and we're like, another virtual market. Awesome. We're equating it to like a KeHE virtual market or a UNFI virtual market. And we're just like, but it's free. So you read the emails, you get on the platform, they bombard you with content and share this on your Instagram, share this on your email. I was like, okay, well, I guess we should give it a crack. It can't hurt. And we picked up like 130 accounts in a month. That was the major catalyst in my experience on that platform for us. And that was when things really kicked off. And that was when we kind of learned about nurturing all the accounts. That's when it was just became so apparent that this is like a huge opportunity. Like we can get this revenue wise to be 25% of our company revenue if we do it right and we maintain it, and it's a higher margin and it's predictable cash flow. And so it was just like, we're all in. So that became, at that point in time, I would say 35 to 50% of my time every week was related in some way, shape, or form to B2B e-commerce. And it stayed that way for the following 8 months.
Yeah. So you really got to know the platforms. You really got to understand, and I'm sure like test and try and sort of perfect, how do we make the most of this platform and also maintain relationships with these 138 plus new customers that we have and can continue to onboard. I know you and I have had several conversations about, the strategies that you utilize and how to make the most of the platform and make sure you've got, as a brand, everything set up right and really working to your advantage. And I've sent a couple of my clients your way for some consultation. So thank you for that. And I want to talk about those things. And I also want to talk about the winter market because that's coming up shortly after this podcast airs. But before we get into that, I want to ask sort of a qualifying question a little bit, because one of my biggest fears, if you will, about having a podcast is that we come here and we talk about these platforms and how great they are, and everyone listening thinks that they need to immediately go and get on the platform. And I think that's not true, right? It's not always the
Mm-hmm.
case that this is going to be the next thing or the next area of focus for every brand who's listening. So do you have any recommendations on, when a brand should consider this, or maybe things that they have to have, like time, photos, right? Like to kind of qualify for people how to determine or when to take the step to focus on this as a sales channel.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll take that opportunity to kind of outline in my head early on, like why this channel was so important. Obviously, I just touched on the margin aspect and the cash flow aspect, and we can dive deeper into that if you want to. But like it was such an alternative to distribution. But for it to be an alternative to distribution to traditional retailers, we needed to provide impeccable customer service. We needed to provide predictability. We needed to provide stability. And we needed to provide something that they couldn't get from alternative channels. So they couldn't get our full catalog. By predictability, like they know where to always go get our stuff. We do our best to keep everything in stock as best as we can, especially our core items. We shipped every single product same day that was received before 3 p.m., except on the weekends. And we provided impeccable response times and feedback to any queries that we got in, any issues, any problems that needed to be resolved. We sell food products. Everybody has bad products at some point in time. It's inevitable. And using these platforms will highlight very quickly if you are ill-equipped to satisfy your customers in that regard. So qualifiers is definitely time. Time is the number one. One, can you get stuff out quick? Do you have enough time to produce enough inventory if you are producing in-house? Do you have enough time to pack and ship every single day? And I don't think that you necessarily have to. I think it kind of depends on your category and what you're selling. If you're selling like a super premium handmade product, I think retailers that are going to be interested in your product are going to respect that it's going to take some time. But if you're selling a commodity type product, you're selling chips or snacks or candy or something along those lines, they can get their UNFI truck. They know when it's coming. They know exactly what time it shows up every week. Same with KE, same with the regional distributor. Like you have to match that level of predictability. So if you don't have that time to mimic or create a better offer than what they can get elsewhere, then my suggestion would be that you wait, because you only get one shot with these customers. So yeah, I mean, we had a full-time fulfillment person, and 50 to 60% of his time was packing and shipping Faire and Mable orders, and he was a 35 to 45 hour a week employee.
Yeah.
So it's important for us. That was important. The other qualifiers I would say would be your media. You do not want just one image. You want a handful of images. I think that they can be iPhone images. I don't think that you need to pay a professional, but there are enough services out there that you can, if you've got 5 products, you can do a photo shoot, then maybe spend $500 to get 3 or 4 different variations of that product. So I think you should invest in the channel in that regard. And yeah, so I would say those are 2 qualifiers, and yeah, and just be able to ship, um, be set up to print labels,
Yeah.
be set up to be efficient with repacking your products if you are in the need to repack your product and you have an area to do that, and you know, have a relationship with your UPS driver and get their phone number and text them, because if you're going to fill up their truck, which is your goal, you should probably let them know. Be nice to your UPS driver. Faire does typically recommend UPS. That shows you a myriad of shipping options. UPS is always their preferred partner. So if you select that, it just makes it kind of easier if you just pick one, because then you only have to worry about lining up one pickup.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I really like the point of thinking about what can you offer the customer that they can't get anywhere else. And so it's not just if you're offering your product like through traditional distribution channels, like how can this channel be different? But it's that opportunity cost, right? Like, can they get another version of your product from the distributor who comes to their location once a week or several times a week? They could call the night before and get the delivery the next morning, right? So thinking about, yeah, what is that customer service, and what do you want to be able to deliver to your customer? I really love that point. And I also think so many times we think, oh, there's this new opportunity to get our product out there. And if it's online, if it's web-based, then we can just set it up and forget it. And so I appreciate that you're really being clear about the fact that this takes time to set up and you should be very thorough about it, but also you don't just forget about it. This is something that you work, that you create systems with. And that I think the other big takeaway I got is that there's guidelines for how you interact with your customers. You have a shipping schedule, you have communication schedule, right? You have things that always get sent on the second order, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's a really strategic way to think about selling in a particular channel, which I think is really smart. I want to talk about the important details and things, like if there's anything else about the setup that you think is important to share. And then I do want to talk a little bit more about pricing, because when we talk about 15% to, I'm just going to call it the platform, 12.5 to 15%, and then still 40 to 50% margin to the retailer, it's like a distribution channel in that there's 2 types of fees, right? Associated with it, or 2 different, customers essentially. So how do we price for that? On top of it, we're shipping. So the cost of our product to the customer is going up a bit. So any kind of pricing strategy that you think is good to share here, I'd be interested in talking about as well.
Yeah, I mean, with the main product I used to sell was kettle chips, and because we had distribution kind of nationally through KE and UNFI, we had to keep those previous SRPs in mind.
Mhm.
So when we set up the pricing for those products, it was very much dictated around the SRP. We also understood that a lot of the independents that were going to be buying on this channel, we could get away with them listing our product above SRP. The SRP was $3.99. So on Faire, we put our SRP at $4.49, because we were like, these types of smaller mom and pop shops, we see it even locally, they're putting 45% on it. They're putting a higher gross margin on it. So we know we can kind of get away with that in this environment. And with the added kind of just convenience of selling on the platform, we knew that retailers would maybe not mind the slightly higher price than what they were getting through a distributor partner. So we were kind of locked in with the kettle chips. There wasn't a ton that we could do, but what we did do is eliminate any of the variable costs, which we kind of already talked about. Like, we don't pay any shipping. We put the shipping on the customer. We put the shipping on the platform. So that's on Faire. As we talked about, insiders sometimes free. Faire does kind of subsidize shipping sometimes if they're not an insider. So they will cover some of the shipping costs, not all of it. but typically after that, it is going to end up falling on the retailer. We try to be really clear with those accounts ahead of time and work with them and make sure pricing does work. And then we would adjust pricing sometimes if it didn't. You can do custom pricing. You can't edit those invoices afterwards. So with the kettle chips, I would say our pricing strategy was really SRP and velocity driven, not so much like let's get the highest margin we could. Where we were fixing that and offsetting it was with our other products. So we had like a line of dips, seasonings, and chocolate bars. Those products we were able to list at a higher margin than what we would be able to list on, through a distributor or even direct locally that we were self-distributing in our vehicles. Yeah, we were targeting closer to like 55% margin on some of those items, as it just kind of made a little more sense for us. And again, removing any variables, we knew what we were going to net, and we were set up really efficiently. Two of those products we self-produce, so we have a very clear understanding of our costs around those products and what it costs for us to make our next unit. And so we were able to kind of operate maybe on a slightly slimmer margin that I would suggest other brands, especially smaller brands, if you are more emerging. One of your more recent ones about margin, I thought was a great tutorial on how to think about that, covering the cost of the first one, your operating costs, having enough money to buy your next one. The beautiful thing, especially about these platforms, though, is it's such improved cash flow. It's not as such a constraint on your cash flow as a KeHE or a UNFI. So my personal take is you can operate a little tighter because you don't have as much unknown about when am I going to get paid? What is that check actually going to be? Yeah, it's not as detrimental to cash flow if it comes in under that 50% mark.
Yeah.
In our experience.
Yeah. And I think, that'll differ for every business depending on how much are you selling, right? What are the margins on the products you are selling? I'm thinking about a couple brands that we work with that have basically 3 products, right? It's like, the just starter kind of product line. And the strategy is direct to retail, right? To maintain the most possible margin. But if we can reach more people, and these B2B e-commerce platforms will help, just got to understand what the right price, as you've pointed out, like what is the right price for this platform? What margin are we going to achieve? And then just kind of taking that back into your overall financial forecast and saying, how does this look for us as a business, right? If we're selling X amount in these channels, I just think a holistic view is always beneficial to have. And echoing back to the first time you were here on the podcast, you talked about how you would run a financial projection for every opportunity that came across, your door or your email. And I think that goes for this as well, right? Anytime you're going to embark on something and you're going to establish a price and you're going to establish an offer or, whatever the shipping will be, just do your homework, take your time, figure out what's right for you and your brand, and go from there.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll add too is because this is your store and because they are your customers, I mean, yes, there is a middleman, but it's effectively, you control the pricing. Right. So you can change it. You don't have to wait 90 days. You don't have to pay a fee. You don't have to do an audit with the distributor to see what they sold at the old price and how that was offset for that 90 days. And then you get a bill for the difference. Like if you're like, we listed this for $355 and $375 is really going to make things feel a lot better. You just go in and change it to $375.
Yeah. And you have the ability to communicate with your customers if necessary via the platform. Yeah.
And then you're done. So it gives you it puts the power back in your hands in that regard. So that's important to think about, that it's not you give pricing to UNFI or KeHE or a distributor. Changing pricing can be incredibly costly especially if you have a surprise increase in your cost of goods and you need to become effective immediately, you can pay up to $900 a DC per product.
Wow.
So the fact that you could just be like, oh, our seasoning just went up, go on Faire, change your price. Hey, retailers, some of you may notice, blah, blah, blah. And you're fine.
Yeah. So you've offered us some really great insights into how to get your product set up right. So make sure you've got the time to, utilize and capitalize on the platform, good photos. I'm going to call it just sort of general operational guidelines and customer service guidelines that you want to consider, making sure your price is right. Anything else that people should be thinking about and ensuring that they get right when they're setting up a new product or their shop in general on a B2B e-commerce site?
I mean, one of the easy ways to get some kind of, what you can do before you maybe like launch is you have this ready to go, is you can start to transition some of your existing B2B customers to the platform. To kind of get that snowball effect going. Say they're ordering direct through email or through text message and you're inputting those invoices into QuickBooks. If you bring a customer to these platforms, there is no commission on that customer.
Okay.
So you can transition customers to the platform, and that kind of gives you that immediate bump out of the gate. You got 20 customers, you're selling XYZ cases a week. And like one of the things that Faire highlights, and so does Mable, is sell-through. So the rate at which customers reorder is part of their algorithm that puts a little badge on your product that says high sell-through. That badge does a lot of damage. It will get you attention. So that is really important to kind of have, that thought is, can we transition accounts over to this platform to help our organic ranking.
So just to make sure I heard you right, if you transition a customer over to the platform, they don't take, for example, the 15%?
They do not take commission. No.
That's fantastic. And so the
Yeah.
benefit is then that it helps, as you're saying, get your product going. You've got orders moving through. That's really cool.
And it benefits the platform because the platform now has another customer that can buy other products that brand is going to pay 15% on.
Yeah. I'm curious just to think about the benefit to the customer for coming to Faire, right? So from a brand and I'm considering moving here and I'm like, what is the benefit to my customer? They used to text me and I would just get the product shipped and we had a system. What's the benefit now to them to going to this platform instead of having a direct communication with me?
They're not necessarily, like, there really maybe isn't. So that's just the way that it is. And there's not everything's rainbows and butterflies. I think that's part of your relationship with those retailers is you're expressing like, this is what's better for me. And if you care about me and my product, then hopefully you'll come along with me on this journey. So if they were buying directly from you previously, they probably had access to your whole catalog. They, all these things, but there is kind of an upside for them. And that is that Faire offers terms. So does Mable. They both offer 60-day terms.
Okay.
So if you weren't offering your customer terms, then that is a big upside. And then you can, I think if they're brand new to the platform, they can also get $100 credit on your products if you bring them there. So there are a couple of incentives, but from like a workflow standpoint, does it make their life easier? The terms could, but some people are like, I don't want to put my credit card on a new platform. And it's like, I don't blame you, neither do I, but this is what I'm going to be using to sell my product because this is more efficient for me and my small company.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not always, I haven't experienced any retailers that I worked with who say, no, I'm not going to buy from you on the platform, but I have gone to retailers that love the product, that don't currently have the product, that were like, I don't want to sign up for something new.
Right.
So you will get that. And, it is what it is. And that's just something that you always have to deal with. And you'll get better at your pitch over time. Because the one thing that I like to say is for those customers, like, and this is the relationships that I've built with the team at Faire and the team at Mable over the past year plus, is like, you're asking me to sell your product and I have to sell my product. So you have to give me as many tools and resources as possible to make that easier. Because now I got to sell two things, one of which I don't get anything out of. So help me out. Help me out here.
That's a great point. So we're in the new year at the time that this episode is airing. And you had mentioned that Faire and Mable and possibly some of the other B2B e-commerce platforms have a winter market. And I think you also said a summer market. So what can folks who are either on these B2B e-commerce sites or who are planning to set them up, what can they be or should they be thinking about to make the most of these upcoming sales?
So, I mean, obviously, these specific promotions and events are just one aspect of a much broader thing with all these platforms, which is just promotions.
Right.
And I can tell you that on both platforms, promotions are very effective, and there are no rules. You can do 5%, you can do 8%, you can do 4%, like whatever you want. Faire does have the ability to do tiered discounts. So if things do become more economical for you with volume when it comes to shipping or with your labor when you're repacking, you can do tiered discounts. Tiered discounts, I can tell you, do work on the platform. When we were running a tiered discount, it was $180 or more, which was essentially 6 cases of our product. We were selling a ton of 6-case orders. We eventually kind of scaled it back once we got to a customer number, like once we got to like 400 customers on the platform. We were like, okay, let's see what it looks like if we turn off promotions and see what kind of consistency we just get from SRP and normal wholesale price. But we still would toggle promotions on and off, and we'd run stuff for 2 weeks. We'd run stuff on just one product category, and utilizing the campaigns and the email features built into the platforms to make those announcements. And one thing I urge people to do, and this was something that I would kind of just started implementing because it irked me, was, and I will get to the summer market and winter market stuff, I promise. But with a distributor, you're setting up your promotions a quarter to 6 months out. Mm-hmm. Retailers are then able to plan their stores because they know what kind of promotions are going to be available. So if you sell a back to school item, you don't want to let the retailer know August 1st that you have a promotion coming up for back to school. Their floor is set. They are done. They're like, tough. I mean, I would have bought it had you told me 3 months ago. So think about those things. And especially if you're trying to beat a distributor at their own game, you need to think like a distributor. And one of those ways is getting ahead of your promotions and making at least your major partners and your best accounts on these platforms aware and sending gentle reminders that, hey, you said you were going to do this, let's work something out. So that tangent aside, the two big opportunities with Faire are the winter selling market and the summer selling market. And as I mentioned earlier, they'll stack promotions on top of yours. They send out tons of emails. They will share different things on their platforms. They will give you a lot of marketing collateral. They will give you templates for your Instagram stories or email newsletters. And I mean, they really do help you sell to the best of their ability. I mean, it's up for you to utilize those things, but they give you a lot of tools to make those events very effective. The most important thing on the tail end is kind of on the tail end of those promotions, because you'll gain you'll gain a lot of customers if you participate and you do things right and you gain a lot of customers, is you have to then communicate with those new accounts. You got to stay on top of them. And sure, some of them are only buying you because you're on promotion and they're probably not going to buy your stuff again. And that's fine. That's just part of running these mass promotions. But for the most part, that is your big opportunity to just really get that momentum and keep it sustained. So having some communications planned for maybe 3 to 5 weeks out after that of, hey, how was the product? How did it perform for you? And just type it up in Google Docs and just copy and paste it into as many messages as it takes. Yeah. It'll take you 30 minutes to send 100 messages. So just do it. And on Mable, again, you can run promotions. They're a smaller outfit, so you can actually email the team at Mable and be like, hey, I'm going to run a promotion on my hero product. Things have been going really well. Can you guys share this in your newsletter? A lot of times, if they've got space, they will happily share your promotion in their newsletter. They don't currently have any recurring events like Faire does. And then Range Me also has some events called Range Me Deal Days. So they just did the first one over the summer. I think they plan on doing 2 annually is their current strategy. We got a few orders from there. It wasn't massive like the Faire. The big thing with Faire is the winter market is coming up. So it's usually like mid-February, first week of February, maybe. So I think it's right after the Super Bowl, I think. So if you're a small team, 1 to 3 people, this is airing early this January.
Yep.
I would start thinking about, using the collateral they're providing, creating some marketing material, get something ready to post on LinkedIn, get something ready to post on your Instagram, on your personal page, if that's what you're doing, as well as your business page. Get some emails set up if you want to send some precursors to your existing Faire accounts saying, hey, we are participating, be on the lookout, these are our deals. The more communication you can have, the better. So I would definitely plan on that. And then, if you do it well and you have a bang up week, which I hope you all do, you're going to have a lot of shipping to do. So operationally, you need to be ready to fulfill orders. It's hard for me to tell brands what they should expect in lift. But if, say you're doing $1,000 a week on the platform, I would expect for the promotion week that you're going to do $3,000 to $4,000 on the platform. If you've got good traffic, if you're already doing well in the organic algorithms, I think you can expect about a 3 times lift during those promotions. So, think about that from an inventory standpoint, not just on your product, but on all your packaging and shipping supplies as well. Your boxes, your tape, if you put inserts in. So one thing that I started doing last year that retailers really liked is I just designed little 5x18 shelf talkers and just got them printed from some website and just made very simple shelf talkers that had our hero product on it and included one of those and a clip that I just bought off of Amazon. It was like a 2-sided clip with a little hinge in the middle. And we started putting those in every single box. I actually listed it on our store as well. You can't list free stuff, so I made it a penny.
Right.
And we had customers ordering those shelf talkers all the time.
That's great.
So there's little things like that you can add to the box. So make sure you have all those inventory things ready to go so you don't fall flat on your face for these events.
One question I have about the promotions in general, and then also sort of the special markets that Faire runs is so let's say you're selling your product on promo, 15% off. Is Faire taking their 15% on the full product price or on the reduced product price?
On the reduced product price.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Do you know if that's across the board for like if you do a promo on Mable, if that's the case? And if you don't know
I
the answer,
believe
that's
so.
fine. Okay. It's something that this hasn't happened on a B2B e-commerce site that I've worked on, but we've done promos through other sort of alternative channels and found that you could run a promo, but then you're paying your commission on your full price. So just something to consider, I think, just in general when you're working with a third party. But I'm glad to hear that they're taking it on the discounted price.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my finance guy would have told me if that wasn't the case. He would have been like, no, we can't do 20% off anymore.
Okay.
Um, so, but yeah, I mean, I'm not 99% because that's kind of the first time I've thought about it, which I'm usually pretty attentive to. I feel like I would have recognized if that was the case,
Yeah.
but we all mess up.
Like I said, I happened to catch it on not one of these sites that we're specifically talking about today, but I hadn't looked into it, individually. I had just come across it on another platform, and I was like, oh, sneaky.
That
Um,
is very sneaky. I
yeah,
don't like that
yeah,
platform.
no.
One of the other sneaky things that a brand can do, and we have to whisper this because I don't want Faire to hear us talking about it. So, the first order, if a customer is on the Faire platform, their first order from you is 25% commission.
Mhm.
So, one of the things that you'll get a lot of sample requests on these platforms. So, one of the things that I did was I created a sample box
Mhm.
and I made it. It was the true wholesale value. So it had 6 of our items. And if you would have taken them from their parent product and totaled them up, it would have been $11 for the wholesale cost of those products. So I made an $11 product and it was the sample product box. And in the copy, I explained what it was. I explained that you could only buy one. And if you bought more than one, we would edit your order to one. And for first time customers, it was 50% off. So, what this does is this kind of filters your 25% order and it gets you paid for sending samples. I originally made it because I just got tired of the sample thing and I was like, I'm just going to put the sample product on here. And then like after I got it loaded, I started thinking about it. I was like, actually the best part about this is it's going to absorb that 25%
Yeah.
on at least, 10 orders a month, maybe that saves you. And our sample, our initial order on the platform was oftentimes one of our collections, which our collection was like $180.
Oh,
So 25% of that is like $46 or something like that.
yeah.
So it made a lot of sense to kind of like, you know, subvert that purchase into a sample purchase. And it became super effective. We sold, a handful of those every week. And we definitely had people try to take advantage of it. And we had accounts that were order like 10 of them for their first order. And because it was 50% off, you just go in and send them a message, say, I'll do that. I can send you one and you can edit the order. You don't have to wait for them to edit it. And then if they're still interested, which they always were, we would then ship just the one case.
I love it. That's a great tip. I think that's a
But
great
don't
tip
tell
to
Faire.
we
Don't
won't.
tell Faire.
Top secret, top secret. Well, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you've been helpful to some of my clients and group members and folks who attended the fireside chat that we had back in August, just helping them to understand some of the details that we covered today, but also taking a look at their individual Faire or Mable, shops to kind of give them some tips and pointers. And I'm so grateful for you for that. And I know that you do offer some consulting, on this topic. Where can folks connect with you or reach out if they're interested in, possibly setting up a consultation with you?
Yeah, the best way, honestly, is through LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Brady DeLong, and hopefully we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do a full-time job. I do some other things on the side. So it is not something. I am very selective with who I work with, and it needs to be a good fit. If you're an emerging brand and you're just looking for like just a little bit of help to get going, don't hesitate to reach out, and can hopefully just give you some quick feedback and some tips. Hopefully, most of the things that I would have shared with a free consultation or like a 30-minute consultation were covered today. Like I'm not deep diving into anything on those that we didn't today. It was the only thing that I didn't cover today was MOQs. That's that I don't believe in them. I believe you should price your product, sell one case profitably, because that's what they can buy from the distributor.
Right.
So beat the distributor. If it doesn't make sense for your brand, it doesn't make sense for your brand. You should strive for a one case MOQ. And so, yeah, I don't work with like every brand that comes through. And like I said, if you're just going to do a 30-minute consult, this is the 30-minute consult, and probably more because you're adding value, obviously. So yeah, this can replace that for me.
Permanent
I'll
link.
I'll put
Yeah.
this in my Calendly flow for when people check the consulting box. I'm like, watch this first if you still need my help. So
yeah, and if the answer to that is yes, then they can find you on LinkedIn and communicate with you, and yeah, you guys can sort out if it's the right fit to move forward. But I think we are excited here at the Good Food CFO, as you are. You're fairly active on LinkedIn. I know you have a new job that you're digging into at the time of this recording, so you've been a little quieter than normal, but we anticipate your full return to LinkedIn and all of your great insights and commentary there. But we're looking for how to disrupt this industry. We're looking to find ways that businesses can grow profitably and do it on their own terms and not feel like they have to go through distribution, not feel like they have to sort of follow the rules that were created a long, long time ago. And so I think this provides a lot of value, great information about this sort of still really relatively new channel.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate
so.
I really appreciate your time, and thank you as always. And hopefully we'll have you back in the community in the future as well. So I appreciate you, Brady. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you as well. And the next job is in like the health and beauty and cosmetic space. So kind of get to see how these methods work outside of food and beverage, which would be fun for me to kind of play with. And I'll have to put my money where my mouth is, because the brand I'm going to work for is currently not on Faire or Mable. So it's a put up or shut up moment for me. I either know what I'm talking about or not. But no, I'm really excited, and it was great to see you. And I hope some people reach out, and if they need some help, hopefully they got that today. And yeah, I'm excited for the future of Good Food CFO. I know you got some awesome stuff going on over there, so congrats.
Thank you. We're excited about it too. Well, as always, again, I appreciate you, and have a great day.
You as well. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review the show wherever you listen. It is the #1 way to help other food founders find the show. I will be back with a brand new episode in 2 weeks.